Good morning, you guys. It is Amanda and Barron with the Kicking Cancer Cares on KSLM Radio, 104.3 FM and 1220 AM. Our sponsor for this first half is Odd Moe's Pizza. Mike has been absolutely amazing supporting us in this cause and getting the good word out. And it's awesome because his pizza is phenomenal. So I love pushing his pizza because it literally doesn't get better than that. And I've tried a lot of pizza in town. Yeah. Nothing compares to him. So
and I would say that not just because he sponsored the show, because it really is amazing pizza.
Truly though, and a lot of time pizza gets like a bad name of being unhealthy. You know, it's pizza, but no, Odd Moe's is so different. So it's got the cauliflower crust. His ingredients are fresh. You look at the pizza and you can see the difference.
Well, and a big thing for me was when we went to his restaurant and made the pizza, and you said you lost weight after eating pizza.
I did.
That's
1.6 pounds.
I know. And we had some pizza when we were that day.
Yes, but it was all good ingredients. I had the green monster with the chicken on it. Oh my gosh, it was so good. The cauliflower crust. So, yes, you can do pizza the right way, and that's with Odd Moe's Pizza.
Thanks again, Mike.
Yes, thanks again, Mike.
We had two great guests here last week.
Yes.
The ladies from the it's called PanCan, but it's the Pancreatic Cancer Society.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, we're in the process of having discussions with Kicking Cancer about how do we create these chapters, these communities.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to try to use their model because they're an affiliate of the major organization, which allows it to be a little easier for them not to have their own individual chapter rules.
Right.
But, man, what a great couple ladies to have a conversation with.
Yes. I can't remember the gal's name.
Sue.
So
Sue was the survivor.
Nope, the other one.
Jennifer.
I think it stuck with me that it was her sister-in-law that had passed.
Yeah.
And she wanted to do more. She wanted to raise awareness. She wanted it to get the word out. She wanted to do something to help prevent pancreatic cancer being detected so late.
Right.
And so I honor that she's just taken that by the reins and getting out there, even though her sister's passed and is no longer here. It was traumatic enough that she's doing this out of the kindness of her heart because she doesn't want others to go through what she went through.
Right.
And that's how we build awareness, is by getting out there. So
and she mentioned it, so I was actually paying attention in Portland on the 21st. The bridges were all lit up in purple.
Yes.
And whether that was her directly or some of the volunteers, whoever took the reins with it, Portland as a city really took purple to heart.
Yeah, they stood behind it, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I did make sure that on my calendar, I have their walk down. We'll be there to support them at their walk next year.
Okay, perfect.
So, well, this week's food is actually an herb.
Okay.
It's oregano.
Oh, okay.
Do you use oregano very often?
I don't. So it's like an Italian seasoning, right?
Yeah.
So I stay away from the Italian seasonings in general because they just taste
different,
like dirt. If I'm being honest,
it's a good, honest answer.
But doesn't mean I can't use them in ways that'll benefit my body versus using them to cook with.
And I would say that I would agree with you that totally oregano has a very different taste to it. Mm-hmm. It does say in here that this Mediterranean herb, like you said, is an antibacterial and rich in antioxidants, which helps your body fight off damage from free radicals. In fact, oregano has anti-cancer potential. According to a study that was done in 2016, oregano they took oregano and put it into a liquid form and then dripped it onto breast cancer cells in a petri dish, and they actually showed the cells going backwards.
Really?
So it suppressed the growth of breast cancer cells in the petri dish. Now, a way to enjoy it, something that you might consider, add chopped fresh oregano to turkey burgers and bean dishes.
Oh. You
can also sprinkle it on Greek salad. Mm-hmm. Add oregano makes a wonderful pizza and focaccia spice.
Okay.
But you're right, it does have a little different taste.
Yeah.
But that's our ingredient today is oregano.
Okay.
And I have a surprise for you next week because our family for our Thanksgiving, we do like a little tray of hors d'oeuvres.
Yes.
And my daughter had some pickled okra. And you said you'd never even heard of okra.
Yes.
I'm going to bring you some pickled okra next week.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I love it.
They're not very tall. I mean, not right along like this.
Yeah.
But I love pickled okra.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring you some pickled okra next week.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I put clove into my mix because of you.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
And that made a big difference for you, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I really want to dedicate this whole first half of our show to an update that is not a positive update, but I think we can turn this into a really positive conversation.
Okay.
For the listeners that have been following our updates over the course of the last several months, Marianne McNamara did pass. And she passed on the 20th at 4:30 in the afternoon. But some really positive things happened in the course of a month that I'd like to bring light to.
Okay.
One, I mean, Marianne's not with us not here, but I'm sure she's going to hear me say this.
Oh, yes, she is.
I met Marianne 2.5 years ago. When it came time for us to need a sponsor for the second half of the show, she jumped right up on board. I think she actually advertised on the station for 1.5 years. She renewed her contract. Mm-hmm. The entire second half.
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
This next month will be 2 years.
Right. So she actively sponsored the second half of our show for almost 2 years. Mm-hmm. And we had her on as a guest at least twice.
Mm-hmm. At least.
At least twice. You got really close to her as a person.
I did.
You know.
I did.
So when we knew what was going on with the cancer, both of us were concerned that this day was going to come. Mm-hmm. And I know when it happened, and I sent you a text, you said, knew it was coming, didn't make it any easier.
No.
It didn't make it easier for me either.
No. I shut down all your calls that day.
You hit me mute. You did mute.
I wasn't ready. I needed time to digest that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Time to process the news.
Yeah. Like we said, we knew it was coming. Our updates with our listeners, we didn't include a lot of information just to protect her and let her have that peace. But we knew it was coming. But like I said, it didn't make it any easier whatsoever.
There's a lot of stuff that I knew, but for her privacy's sake and for the family, I just wanted to tell what I could tell.
Correct.
Now, for the record, her husband, Dan, has given permission for us to talk about this. Mm-hmm. So it would have been the 26th of October, so a month ago, that I went to the Breast Friends big event.
Yes, that's right.
And she was actually one of their speakers that year. Now, 2 years ago, she was honored 2 years ago for her efforts out here in Salem.
Yeah.
And this year, they had designed the program way ahead of time, and she was going to be their survivor speaker. So I came up to her and just asked her how she was doing. Her coloring was a little weird that day. We have kind of rosy cheeks. Hers was a little white, almost grayish looking. Mm-hmm. Her hair wasn't done up like it usually is. And I just said, how are you doing? Just a, normal time of question.
Yeah.
She told me then that she had 2 to 3 weeks to live. Because the cancer had left the bones, it had gotten into her liver. They couldn't control it in the liver, and it had jumped to her spleen, and her spleen had swollen up dramatically. And when the doctors realize they can't control it, they're basically trying to prepare you mentally for the end to come. But that was the 26th of October. 2 things happened during the course of the last month that I just want to bring to light. During her presentation to the crowd, she basically was thanking last people that have been involved in her life. She was saying goodbye without saying goodbye. But she has 2 kids. Now her son is married and wonderful wife. They was there. Her daughter Erin works for Breast Friends.
Okay.
Her daughter Erin has a boyfriend. And at least 3 times during her presentation, she was really hoping to have a son-in-law. It was not even a slight hint. She really wanted Erin to get married. And I think because, Erin and her boyfriend were serious, her husband, Dan, is certified to perform weddings. Mm-hmm. So on the 9th of this month, Erin got married.
So she got to see her daughter.
Get married. Yeah. So before she passed, both kids were married.
That's really cool. That's really special. Cool. She got to see that.
Yeah. I'm going to give you these right now. This is not going to be easy for either one of us. And then, again, she didn't know this, but all of the realtors in town, because she belongs to a realtor association, they vote every year for who they believe was the realtor of the year. And on the 13th, she was recognized by her peers as realtor of the year.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
So we're going to miss Marianne.
Yeah. I think what I loved most about her is that even in her battle, she was all about other people. With running Best Friends and making sure she gathered with a group of women to inspire them and just be there and support them, even though she's going through what she went through.
Right.
She still showed up for them. Same thing with just being involved with D-Day for her dad and making awareness for the veterans. She showed up for them. Yeah. Just everything. She showed up for people. And so I just loved that. She had the biggest radiating, smiling personality ever, even in her sad, dark times.
Yeah. I know I came to her, with my job at the baseball stadium. I came to her last year, probably about May, and I said, what do you think about having a baseball game dedicated to D-Day on June the 6th?
Yeah.
And she loved the idea. And I went to the owners of the stadium. I said, why don't we have a military appreciation game on June the 6th, which was a Thursday, not typically a really highly attended day for baseball.
Right.
Sponsored by the Malarkey family.
Yeah.
And they said yes. And Marianne had a table, and she had her dad's book there, which I want to reference this in a minute. And all of her friends from here in town showed up. Marianne went to high school here in Salem, graduated from South Salem High School, and there was a ton of veteran support for that day specifically. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm pleased to announce that this will be in her honor, but D-Day game will happen again next year.
Okay, that's awesome.
And I'm working alongside a guest that's going to come on the show here in the near future named Andrew Holbert with Courtney's Place. And Andrew has agreed to come in and talk about what vets go through when it comes to cancer. Mm-hmm. But we're going to keep her dad's legacy and her legacy alive at the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
And I think you and I were talking about how many people in this town actually knew who Don Malarkey was.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah. And her ties and everything. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I had asked her back in October, and again, I didn't realize the gravity of her situation. But I said, how do you feel about coming on the show again in December and reminding the listeners what your dad went through? And she said, well, we'll see how I'm feeling.
Right.
I didn't know the gravity back then, So totally understand why. But I would like to circle back to a show that we did a year ago.
Okay.
So it was actually on December the 13th last year. Marianne came with us. And if you remember, the entire first half of that show, we titled it, They Froze.
Yes.
So if you go to any of the podcast services, you got to scroll back to last year, but there's a podcast called They Froze, and the picture of it is a bunch of trees all in white. And she told our listeners what her dad went through during the Battle of the Bulge. Mm-hmm. You remember that conversation?
Oh, yeah. How the trees were basically exploding and almost weapons themselves because they were so frozen and shattering, and them digging holes in the frozen ground. Yeah, what her dad went through was impressive.
Was very impressive.
To say the least. And I love that she didn't let him die in vain.
Nope.
And I love how you're going to hold her legacy and not let her die in vain as well.
Nope. So I have been reading through the book about her dad, right?
Yeah. What is the title of that book?
So this is called Saving My Enemy. And just for the listeners, for those that are on YouTube, which, by the way, let me stop for a second. If you are listening and you go to YouTube and you find us, please subscribe. Mm-hmm. Just because you watch us doesn't help. It does help, but please hit subscribe. Plus, you'll get notifications on future ones coming up.
Yeah.
So I guarantee you on YouTube right now, this picture of this book is showing up. Mm-hmm. And this book was written by Bob Welch, and there was a lot of the consulting work on it from Marianne.
Right.
But also, the other person of this book, his name is Fritz.
Yep.
So on the front of the book, you'll see two people's pictures. Fritz is a German soldier, And so his kids consult on the book as well. And the book is really an amazing comparison about this young man who grew up in Astoria, Don Malarkey.
Yep.
And this young man who grew up in Germany, except he grew up during Hitler's youth era.
Yes.
And totally bought into the entire Hitler's youth movement that was happening in Germany. And the events of the Battle of the Bulge changed his perspective on who Hitler was.
Okay.
I'm at the part of the book that's post-war. In fact, the one I just read, it was, so we're out of the war, and it's the early 1960s, and Fritz heard that JFK had been assassinated. And he and a lot of the other youth his age mourned the death of our president.
Okay.
Because his era really felt that if anyone could unify this entire world, it was JFK. And in fact, he says in the book, Fritz says in the book, if JFK had told them to tear the wall down with their bare hands, they would have done it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's a very interesting perspective from the German side.
Yeah.
Okay. But we've had some interesting episodes on stress.
Yeah.
With Kate.
Yes.
And doing some yoga in her studio.
I probably should shake it out right now.
Well, I know that Marianne's family is processing this news. I know that you and I are processing this news.
And grief comes in all different ways.
All different ways. Go back to our very first YouTube. Very first one, we had Dee Dee Smith on. And she talked about how grief is not linear. It kind of loops.
Yes.
It loops, right?
Exactly.
And it's probably looping again. But I want to read a little section of this book because I think it applies both to this situation, but for us as well.
Okay.
And then again, ways to honor her dad. So her dad is talking about an event that happened in a town called Foy, Belgium. And it was in January of 1945. So the Battle of the Bulge itself had kind of culminated. Now they're actually trying to take the cities as they're moving their way towards Berlin. He said Don, was standing beside a building with another soldier, and they were advancing towards a German position. Don was getting ready to advance across an open area with hostile enemy fire was striking around him. The soldier with him caught his arm and told him, Don, let me go. I'm a corporal. You're a sergeant. It's my duty. The fellow stepped out of the corner of the building and was immediately struck in the throat by a bullet. Oh. That's a traumatic event.
Yeah.
And then it says in the book that Don stopped talking for a while and bowed his head, remembering what had happened.
Yeah.
Right? Don was only 19 years old.
That is so young.
He's a sergeant, but he's 19. That's just barely older than your boys.
Yeah, barely.
Barely.
Wasn't that like most of the soldiers that were sent over there?
Most of the soldiers.
18, 19.
Yeah, the young corporal was 16 years old.
Even younger?
Those are just
even
children.
Younger, even younger. So the guy writing this book is trying to put in perspective what is happening to these soldiers. So what he says is when somebody, a soldier in this case, is in danger, the brain secretes stress-responsive substances that alter the functioning of the brainstem, the limbic system, and the frontal lobes. The brainstem and the limbic system serve to mobilize the body to respond, fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
While the frontal lobes and the other cortical areas elevate the situation to determine the best response. So that's what our brain is going through, right? Except that was a very instantaneous thing for Don. They're at this corner of the building. The corporal says, I'll go first. He steps out, bullet through the throat. Stressful situation.
Very.
Okay. He goes on to say, in Malarkey's case, this stressful event, war, comprised one traumatic situation layered over another and another and another. Mm-hmm. Her dad served for 177 days on the front line. More than anyone else in Easy Company, because a lot of them had died.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, her dad dealt with survivor's guilt for a long time.
I can only,
right?
Yeah.
He says, as a combat veteran quoted once, if you had 70 near-fatal car accidents in 1 year of your life between the ages of 18 and 19, do you think that would mess yourself up a little bit?
Yeah. I wouldn't want to I wouldn't even want to visually see a vehicle.
Right. And that's what a lot of our soldiers went through during 1944.
That's a crazy perspective and way to put it.
Right?
Yeah. That's a lot. That's
so
a lot of trauma.
Today is the last day of November. Tomorrow we begin December. And I thought, I wanted to honor Marianne for what she's done for us and her legacy. But what her dad went through 80 years ago, these soldiers went through some traumatic events. And then once we get through December 1944, well, now we're trying to take this city in Belgium, and this another traumatic event happens with this corporal.
Yeah.
So stress is a crazy thing.
Didn't she say that they knew Tom Hanks because of the Saving Private Ryan movie?
Yeah. Marianne told me one time that she and Tom Hanks got to be pretty good friends.
Yeah.
And she actually refers to him as Tom. I said, he'll always be Mr. Hanks to me, but she knows Tom Hanks really well. She knew Tom Hanks really, really well. And she actually had a chance to meet Steven Spielberg.
That's awesome.
And all of the people that played the different roles in Band of Brothers, she met all of them as well.
Because the last name Malarkey, isn't that one of the characters in Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
A
Yes.
legacy.
Yeah.
A legacy is right. And I think that her dad's story and what he went through, I think that gave her a lot of hope and strength for her battle and what she went through. I feel like I heard her reference it a few times, like, you know, if he can do this, then I can do this. And so I love that she took what he did and turned it into something positive for herself. Like it used it as in a warrior sense.
Yeah. Well, I know I was trying to go back and find that podcast from last year. So the first half of it is talking about the war and the freezing. The second half of it, she's given us an update.
Okay.
And if you find that particular half, it says Marianne's in her 8th battle. Well, she had one more after that in this last year. She actually battled that bone cancer 9 times.
Yeah.
But that podcast a year ago was her 8th battle. And after telling what her dad went through, she said he gave her strength.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
8 tries to get that cancer out of her bones, and they couldn't find the solution. She was getting discouraged. She says, if my dad could go through what he went through, I'll keep fighting.
Yeah.
And
she didn't give up.
No.
She tried several different experimental studies. And I mean, she was doing everything under the sun. Throw the sink at me.
Throw that. Well, I just, as a way to honor her, for those that are watching on YouTube, you're wearing pink.
I am.
And for the liver cancer.
And she always had her beanie.
Yep. I'm wearing the green for liver cancer. You're wearing the pink for the breast cancer.
I'm honoring Marianne.
Yeah, we honor her greatly. So, well, in our last couple of minutes before our commercial break, we have been doing something fun with some little pieces of trivia and people reaching out.
Yeah.
We had someone reach out.
Okay.
And I want to shout a lady named Suzanne Lule.
Hi, Suzanne Lule.
Who lives in Dallas, Oregon.
Awesome.
And she said, I love your show. Love your show. In fact, she loves our show so much that our camera person, Ashlie, has been having some interesting conversations with Suzanne Lule. But our current shout-out goes to Suzanne Lule from Dallas, Oregon.
Awesome. I love that.
She's related to Ozzy.
Oh, yes. Suzanne Lule is Ozzy's aunt.
Okay. Interesting.
So she's kind of followed us for a little while.
Yeah. Oh,
and
I
then
love
when
that.
she knew that, and she sent me a note saying, I love your stickers. So I am going to mail Suzanne Lule one of our stickers for being our shout out person this week.
Perfect. See, I love how our community just comes together for one another. She knew somebody that had cancer, Ozzy, it sounds like.
Yep.
And just how she continues to listen. And what I love about our show is that it teaches us to do better.
Yeah.
That's one thing with Marianne passing away, is that I am eating better and healthier, and I'm so thankful for it. Even this weekend, I went and got some extra teas and was just drinking some good stuff to fuel my body and hopefully make me feel better. And so it's just important that we feed our bodies and souls the right things to keep us as healthy and going as long as possible.
Well, I love that our YouTube channel is called When You Know Better,
You Do Better.
You Do Better. Mm-hmm. And you and I have been doing this show for over 2.5 years, and it's always been my goal that we could teach somebody to know better, to do better. Mm-hmm. And then, as we've said more than once, save yourself, and then each one teach one.
Yep.
you know, and I know that you've affected your family. I know Ashlie affected her family. If you're listening, save yourself. And then each one teach one, and that's how we begin to turn the tide on this vicious disease.
Our newest thing is no microwave.
Oh!
No microwave. So even with our knowledge, we continue to get better every day. I mean, there's still so much to learn and do and just become a better person for yourself. So, all right. Well, huge shout out to Oddmo's, Mike, for sponsoring this first half. Amazing pizza. You guys will not be disappointed. I challenge you to call in and don't even leave your house. Get it delivered. Get the Green Monster with chicken, cauliflower crust. Get the potato poppers. They're amazing. You'll thank me later. Their donut dunkers are phenomenal. And their mojos and some soda or beer. They've got their different beer from
Sandy M.
Brewing. Yep. Yeah. So thank you again, Mike, so much. All right, we'll be right back. You guys stay tuned.